It didn't start with a headline. It started with a video. No big premiere. No red carpet. No press conference. Just a quiet upload. At first, people didn't even believe it was real. The thumbnail showed Nicole Kidman sitting in a simple room. No heavy makeup. No dramatic lighting. Just natural light coming through a window behind her. She looked different. Not in a shocking way. Just calm. Ill. Like someone who had already made peace with something the rest of the world hadn't even begun to understand yet. When she started speaking, her voice was soft. Slower than usual. Careful. She didn't jump straight into it. She talked about time. About how fast it moves. About how life doesn't always go the way you think it will. Even when everything on the outside looks perfect. Then she paused. And that's when everything changed. I think it's time for me to say goodbye. That line spread across the internet within minutes. Fans replayed it over and over, trying to understand what she meant. Goodbye to what? Acting? Hollywood? Public life? There was no immediate explanation. Just silence after that sentence. And somehow, that silence said more than anything else. Within hours, social media exploded. News outlets picked it up. People who had grown up watching her films couldn't process it. She wasn't just another actress stepping away. She had been part of the industry for decades. Always present. Always working. Always evolving. And now, suddenly, she was leaving? What made it even harder to understand was her tone. She wasn't sad in a visible way. She wasn't breaking down. But there was something underneath her words. Something heavy. Something she wasn't fully saying out loud. She thanked her fans. She talked about the roles that shaped her life. She mentioned how grateful she was for every opportunity. But then she said something that made people pause again. I gave everything I had. And now I need to give something back to myself. That line didn't sound like a typical retirement speech. It sounded like someone who had been holding something in for a long time. Something personal. Something real. By the time the video ended, millions had already watched it. And yet, no one felt like they fully understood it. Because this wasn't just a goodbye. It felt like the end of a chapter no one saw coming. And the biggest question remained unanswered. Why now? Long before the cameras, the awards, and the global fame, Nicole Kidman was just a quiet kid growing up far from Hollywood. She was born in Honolulu, Hawaii. But that wasn't where her story really began. Her family moved back to Australia when she was still very young, and that's where she spent most of her childhood. Her parents were not part of the entertainment world at all. Her father was a psychologist. Her mother was involved in education and social work. They lived a life built around thinking, learning, and understanding people. Not fame, not celebrity, not attention. And that environment shaped her in ways most people don't realize. She wasn't the loud kid in the room. She wasn't chasing attention. If anything, she was shy. Very shy. She spent a lot of time observing, watching people, listening more than she spoke. That quiet nature would later become one of her biggest strengths as an actress. But back then, it made her feel invisible sometimes. As a child, she found an escape in performance. Not because she wanted to be famous, but because it gave her a way to express things she couldn't say out loud. She started with ballet, then drama classes. On stage, something changed. The same girl who struggled to speak confidently in real life could suddenly become someone else entirely. Stronger, braver, louder. It wasn't about pretending. It was about finally being able to feel something fully. But life at home wasn't always easy. There were expectations. Her parents valued education deeply. Discipline mattered. Focus mattered. There wasn't room for distractions. So when Nicole started leaning more toward acting, it wasn't immediately seen as a serious path. It felt uncertain, risky. Still, she kept going. As a teenager, she began getting small roles in Australian television and film. Nothing huge. Nothing life-changing at first. But enough to show that she had something different. Something real. Directors noticed it. That quiet intensity. That ability to hold emotion without forcing it. Even then, there were signs she wasn't like everyone else. But behind the scenes, there was pressure building. Because once you start being noticed, expectations follow. And for someone who was naturally reserved, that attention wasn't easy to handle. She wasn't chasing fame, but fame was slowly finding her anyway. By the late 1980s, Nicole Kidman was no longer just a teenager trying out small roles. She was starting to get real attention. The turning point came with the film Dead Calm. It wasn't just another project. It was intense, psychological, demanding, and it pushed her in ways she hadn't experienced before. The role required emotional depth, vulnerability, fear, and she delivered it in a way that surprised people. Suddenly, critics weren't just noticing her. They were talking about her. Hollywood started paying attention. And that's when everything began to shift. Because success doesn't come alone. It brings pressure with it. More offers started coming in. Bigger roles. Bigger expectations. People wanted to see if she could do it again. And again. And again. But behind the scenes, things weren't as simple as they looked. She was still young. Still figuring herself out. And now she was being placed into an industry that moves fast and doesn't wait for anyone to catch up. There were long hours, constant travel, new environments, new people, and a growing feeling that she had to prove herself every single time. There was no room to fail. At least, that's how it felt. The pressure wasn't always loud. It didn't always show up as stress you could easily see. Sometimes it was quiet, a constant thought in the back of her mind. Am I good enough? Can I keep this going? Do I belong here? And those thoughts don't just disappear. They stay. They build. Even as the outside world sees success, the inside can feel very different. That's something many people didn't understand at the time. They saw the rising star. They saw the beauty, the talent, the growing fame. But they didn't see the weight that came with it. Because from this point on, her life was no longer just her own. Every move mattered. Every role mattered. Every decision mattered. And slowly, without anyone really noticing, the pressure started becoming part of who she was. Not something temporary, but something that would follow her for years. Something that, decades later, might finally explain why that quiet video, at 58, felt so heavy, and why her goodbye didn't sound like relief. It sounded like something much deeper. By the early 1990s, Nicole Kidman was no longer just a rising actress from Australia. She had crossed into Hollywood, and Hollywood noticed her fast. One film changed everything. Days of Thunder. It wasn't just the role. It was who she met on set. Tom Cruise. At that time, he was already one of the biggest stars in the world. Confident, established, always in control of the spotlight. Nicole was different. Quiet, observant, still adjusting to the scale of Hollywood. But something connected between them. Fast. Their relationship moved quickly, and before long, they were married. From the outside, it looked like a perfect story. Two famous actors. A powerful Hollywood couple. Red carpets. Magazine covers. Global attention. But life inside that spotlight is rarely simple. Suddenly, Nicole wasn't just being seen as an actress. She was being seen as Tom Cruise's wife. And that label followed her everywhere. Every interview, every headline, every public appearance. It created a strange kind of pressure, one that had nothing to do with acting. People questioned her independence, her identity, her place in the industry. And even though she continued working, continued taking roles, something about her public image felt smaller than her actual talent. At the same time, she was still growing as an actress. Films like Far and Away and Eyes Wide Shut showed different sides of her ability. She wasn't standing still. But the spotlight didn't always focus on her work. It focused on the relationship, on the marriage, on the image. And over time, that kind of attention starts to blur things. Because when the world sees you one way, it becomes harder to hold on to who you really are. There were moments when she seemed perfectly in control. Smiling at events. Speaking confidently in interviews. But behind that, there were things she didn't say. Feelings she didn't explain. Because not everything can be shared when you're living under constant public attention. And for Nicole, that period of her life became both a breakthrough and a quiet struggle at the same time. In 2001, everything changed. The marriage ended. And it didn't just end quietly. It shocked people. Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise were no longer together. For the public, it was surprising. For her, it was something much deeper. Because when a relationship like that ends, it doesn't just take away a person. It takes away a version of your life. A version of who you thought you were. Suddenly, she was alone again. Not just personally, but professionally too. There was no shared spotlight anymore. No identity tied to someone else. And that meant starting over. But starting over in Hollywood isn't easy. Especially when everyone is watching. There were questions, doubts, speculation. People wondered what would happen to her career. Would she fade away? Would she lose her place? But instead of stepping back, she moved forward. And she did it in a different way. She chose roles that were more intense, more personal, more demanding. She stopped trying to fit into expectations and started choosing work that reflected something real. That shift changed everything. Because now, people weren't just seeing her as part of a couple. They were seeing her as an individual artist. And that came with a different kind of respect. But even as her career began to rise again, the emotional side of things didn't just disappear. Divorce leaves a mark. Changes how you see yourself, how you trust, how you move forward. There were moments when she admitted feeling lost. Moments when everything felt uncertain. But she kept working, kept showing up, kept building something new from what had been broken. And slowly, piece by piece, she rebuilt her identity. Not as someone connected to fame, but as someone defined by her own choices. By the early 2000s, Nicole Kidman had done something not everyone expected. She didn't just recover. She transformed. Her performance in The Hours changed how people saw her. The role was complex, deep, emotionally heavy, and she didn't hold back. When she won the Academy Award for that performance, it wasn't just about the award itself. It was about what it represented. Recognition, respect, validation. She had stepped out of a shadow and proven something on her own terms. But success at that level brings its own kind of pressure. Because once you reach the top, the expectation is to stay there. Every role after that mattered even more. Every performance was compared to the last. And the industry doesn't slow down. It keeps moving, always asking for more. More emotion, more commitment, more availability. And over time, that constant demand starts to take something from you. Even if you love what you do, even if it's your passion, there's still a cost. For Nicole, that cost wasn't always visible. She continued working in major films, continued receiving praise, continued building one of the most respected careers in Hollywood. But behind all of that, there were quieter struggles. Exhaustion, pressure to maintain perfection, the feeling that she always had to give everything, every time. There's a line she once hinted at in interviews. That acting requires you to go to places inside yourself. And when you do that again and again, it doesn't just disappear when the camera stops. It stays with you. It builds. And sometimes, it becomes harder to separate yourself from the roles you play. That's something many actors don't talk about openly. But it's real. And over decades, it adds up. By this point in her life, Nicole had everything people think they want. Fame, awards, recognition, success. But none of those things erase the emotional weight of a long career. They don't cancel out the sacrifices. They don't undo the years of pressure. And slowly, quietly, those things began shaping something deeper inside her. Something that wouldn't fully show itself yet, but was already there. Waiting, building, leading step by step toward that moment years later, when she would sit in front of a camera and say goodbye. After years of pressure, heartbreak, and rebuilding, Nicole Kidman found something she hadn't felt in a long time. Stability. Not the kind that comes from success or recognition, but something quieter. Something personal. That came when she met Keith Urban. Their connection wasn't loud or rushed like before. It felt slower, more grounded. He wasn't trying to compete with her career. He wasn't part of the same Hollywood machine in the same way. And that made a difference. They got married in 2006, and for the first time in a long time, Nicole seemed to step into a different version of her life. Not just an actress, but a partner, a mother, someone building a home. They had children together, and that changed everything. Because no matter how big your career is, family shifts your focus, changes what matters. There were moments when she stepped back from work. Not completely, but enough to be present. To experience life outside of film sets and cameras. And from the outside, it looked like she had finally found balance. A successful career. A stable marriage. A growing family. But even in that stability, there were things she didn't talk about much. Because balancing everything isn't as simple as it sounds. There were long periods away from home for filming. Moments of guilt that come with missing time. The constant pull between professional commitments and personal life. And even though she rarely showed it publicly, that tension was always there. She once hinted in interviews that motherhood changed how she saw everything, including her career. Roles started to feel different. Time started to feel more limited. Energy wasn't endless anymore. And slowly, priorities began shifting. Not all at once, but quietly, gradually. There were also personal struggles that stayed behind closed doors. Things she chose not to fully share. Because not everything needs to be public. Not everything should be. But those private challenges, the emotional weight, the responsibility, the constant movement between two worlds, they started adding up. And even though she kept going, kept working, kept showing up, something inside her was beginning to slow down. Not in a visible way, but in a way only she could feel. By the time Nicole Kidman reached her 50s, she had already spent decades in the industry. Most people would have stepped back long before. But she didn't. She kept working. Film after film. Series after series. New roles. New challenges. From the outside, it looked like she had endless energy. Like she never stopped. But the reality was different. Because staying at that level for that long comes with a cost. A physical cost. An emotional cost. And over time, those costs don't reset. They build. Filming schedules became harder on the body. Long days. Long nights. Constant travel. The kind of pace that's manageable when you're younger, but starts to feel different with time. There were also the emotional demands. Because acting, especially the kind of role she took on, requires going deep. Into pain. Into fear. Into complicated parts of the human experience. And doing that repeatedly isn't something you can just switch off. Even when the scene ends. Even when the project wraps. Parts of it stay with you. That's something many actors quietly deal with, but rarely explain. For Nicole, those layers had been building for years. Decades, even. And at some point, it becomes harder to separate where the roles end and where you begin. There was also the pressure of staying relevant. Hollywood doesn't slow down. It doesn't wait. New faces appear constantly. New expectations. New standards. And even for someone as established as her, that pressure doesn't disappear. If anything, it changes form. It becomes quieter, but heavier. There's also something else that comes with long-term success. A question that starts to appear more often. How much longer can I keep doing this? Not because of failure, but because of exhaustion. Because of time. Because of life moving forward. There were moments, small ones, where people started noticing something different about her. Not in her performances, but in her presence. Interviews where she seemed more reflective. Answers that felt more personal. A tone that suggested she was thinking about something beyond her next project. It wasn't obvious, but it was there. And behind all of it, there was a growing feeling that maybe, just maybe, she was getting close to a point where continuing didn't feel the same anymore. Not because she lost passion, but because she had given so much of herself for so long. And eventually, even the strongest people reach a point where they start asking, what's left for me? The decision didn't happen overnight. It wasn't one moment. It was many small moments, building over time. For Nicole Kidman, the idea of stepping away had likely been sitting in the background for years. Quiet, unspoken, but present. It showed up in different ways. Moments of hesitation before accepting a new role. Longer pauses between projects. Conversations with family that went deeper than before. And then, something shifted. Not publicly, not dramatically, but internally. There are times in life when everything looks fine from the outside, but inside something changes. A realization, a clarity, a moment where you stop pushing forward and start asking why. For her, that moment came later than most, because she had always pushed through, always kept going, but this time felt different, because it wasn't about career anymore. It wasn't about success or recognition. It was about something more personal, something she had been putting aside for years. There were reports that she had been spending more time at home, more time away from the spotlight, choosing carefully what she worked on and what she didn't. And those close to her noticed it. A shift in energy, a different focus. Then came the conversations with Keith Urban, with her children, with the people she trusted most. And those conversations weren't about roles or scripts. They were about life, about time, about what comes next. Because at some point, continuing the same path stops feeling right, even if it's the path that made you who you are. The truth, the part that shocked people the most, wasn't just that she decided to step away. It was why now. Because this wasn't about losing opportunities. She still had them. It wasn't about fading relevance. She was still respected. It wasn't even about one single event. It was about accumulation. Years of giving. Years of pressure. Years of putting parts of herself into her work. And reaching a point where she realized something simple, but difficult to admit. She was tired. Not just physically, but deeply, emotionally. And in that kind of exhaustion, there's a moment where you stop asking what the world expects from you, and start asking what you need for yourself. That's the moment everything changes. That's the moment she chose to listen. And once that decision was made, there was no going back. Only one thing left to do. Say it out loud, and let the world hear it. When Nicole Kidman finally released her full message, it didn't feel like a press statement. It felt personal, almost like she was speaking to one person at a time. The video was longer than people expected. No background music, no dramatic editing, just her, sitting still, taking her time. She started by thanking the audience, not in a formal way, but in a quiet, honest tone. She talked about the early days, the uncertainty, the roles that changed her life. She mentioned dead calm. She mentioned the hours, not as achievements, but as moments that shaped who she became. Then her voice slowed. You could see it in her face. This wasn't easy. I've spent most of my life being someone else, she said. That line hit people hard, because it sounded simple, but it carried something deeper. She explained how acting gave her everything. A voice, a purpose, a way to connect with people all over the world. But it also asked something from her in return. Time, energy, pieces of herself. Every role takes something, she said quietly. And over time, you don't always notice how much you've given away. There was a pause after that. A long one. She looked down for a moment before continuing. And then she said something no one expected. I don't fully know who I am without it anymore. That wasn't a line from a script. That was real. And that's when people started to understand. This wasn't just about stepping away from work. It was about trying to find herself again. After decades of living inside characters, inside expectations, inside an industry that never really stops. She talked about her family, about Keith Urban, about her children, how they became her anchor when everything else felt overwhelming. And then she said something that shifted the entire message. I've missed moments, real moments, because I was always somewhere else, being someone else. There was no dramatic breakdown, no tears falling, but her voice carried weight, the kind of weight that comes from holding something in for a long time. She wasn't blaming anyone. She wasn't expressing regret in a loud way, but you could hear it between the lines. Years of choosing work over stillness. Years of moving forward without stopping to ask if she needed to slow down. Then came the part that people kept replaying. The part that turned the video from emotional to unforgettable. "I'm not leaving because I don't love this anymore," she said. "I'm leaving because I finally need to love my life more." That was the truth. Not a scandal. Not a sudden collapse. Not something dramatic or explosive. Just a quiet realization that came after years of pushing through. She wasn't running away. She was stepping back. And that difference mattered. She ended the message with something softer. A promise, not about returning, not about future projects, but about something simpler. "I'll still be here. Just in a different way." No explanation of what that meant. No clear next step. Just that line. And then the video ended. No music. No fade out. Just silence. And somehow, that silence stayed with people longer than anything she said. After the video, the reaction didn't slow down. It grew. Fans shared clips. Actors responded. Directors posted messages. People who had worked with Nicole Kidman for years spoke about her dedication, her focus, the way she gave everything to every role. But the most powerful reactions came from ordinary viewers. People who had grown up watching her films. People who had seen parts of their own lives reflected in her performances. Because for them, this didn't feel like a celebrity announcement. It felt personal, like someone they had known, without ever meeting, was stepping away. There was no scandal to explain it, no controversy to debate, just a quiet decision that made people stop and think. About time, about identity, about what it means to give so much of yourself to something for so long, and then one day, decide it's enough. Her legacy doesn't need to be listed. It's already there. In the roles, in the moments, in the way she made people feel something real. That doesn't disappear just because she's no longer on screen. If anything, it stays stronger. Because now, people are looking back at it differently. Not just as performances, but as pieces of a life she shared, one role at a time. And maybe that's what makes this goodbye feel different. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet, honest, and real. So what do you think about Nicole Kidman's story and her decision to walk away? Let me know in the comments. If this story moved you, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. We bring you real stories behind the fame, the ones people don't usually talk about. I'll see you in the next one.